10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Turn the friggin' frogs gay. Serious crap.
Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. How you guys doing? Trying to get the debate pulled up here. I was trying to figure out where the best place was to watch it. If anybody out there in the chat has any ideas, let me know. I was looking on the Sky News had it posted, and I know
on the line.
I know there's several places. I'm just trying to figure out because some of the places, and this is what I don't like, and this is why it sucks because there's always that oh yeah, watch it here, watch the debate, blah 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 blah, and then you get there and then they cut off right before the debate, and it's just what you've just been watching. You were just watching commentary leading up to it. So yeah, I know. So I'm trying to make sure I'm on the right one. Yeah, see, Sky News just shut off. So that's not it.
That's why the debate's even happening in the first place.
So the one on PBS says, okay, yeah, I think the one on PBS is good. So I'll put that link out there in the chat for anybody that wants to use that one because they're starting it up because it does say it's a simulcast and I can see it right now. So
how's everybody this evening?
Just ready for this master debate.
A master debate? Well, yes.
Yeah, I got my Korean turtle chocolate churro chips. I'm ready to watch this.
I'm getting idiot audio from
heading back home, getting some
stream at all.
How are you master debaters doing tonight?
Oh, just great. I've been master debating all day today in preparation for this.
Right.
So, which is what you got to do,
Apparently, yeah.
And just so everybody knows, we are simulcasting this right now on both Never Enough Ammo and my channel.
Yes.
So no matter where you're looking, you're going to see us.
That's right. This is Welcome to the Guns and Geeks Frogs podcast. I don't know. I didn't have much of I wasn't being very creative. I was just like, fuck it, mash them together. What happens? That sounds good. And why not?
Right.
So how long do we think this is actually going to last?
It's supposed to be 90 minutes. So it's supposed to be a 90-minute debate. It will probably go over a little bit. I'm not getting any audio from that. Is anybody out there getting audio from that? That link that I just dropped in?
I'm using a different
link. I'm driving.
I'm not even trying yet. I'm eating dinner real quick. So I'm being quiet.
Yeah, I'm trying to hurry up home. I just picked up dinner from you and the old lady.
Okay, there we go. Hold on.
So that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a
Oh, they're already going?
My passion, one of them is small businesses.
Okay.
My mother raised my sister and me, but there was
they're doing their opening statements is what they're doing now.
We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction.
I don't know. Should they even worry about sharing the audio since everybody's got to watch it themselves anyway?
The backbone of America's economy.
Oh, I'm on the phone, so I can't really do that.
His plan is to do what he has done before.
I can't show the video.
Billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion
copyright strike real fucking quick because it's ABC.
My opponent has a plan that I call
have not been getting copyrighted,
which would be a 20% tax.
Well, we'll see here pretty quick.
Everyday goods that you rely on.
Because if it happens pretty quick, usually within the first 5 to 10 minutes.
That Trump sales tax would actually result for middle class families in about $4,000 more a year, because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes. First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. They would totally destroy
Right into
everything that
tariffs.
they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places they've left the tariffs on. When I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation has, which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
Because of
Donald
COVID,
Trump left
and everybody
us
knows
the worst
that.
public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left
I want to see the video.
worst attack on our democracy.
Then watch it.
since
What are you talking
the
about?
Civil War.
Okay,
And what
put the
we
link
have
in there.
done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed
There's the
and
link in the
dangerous
private
plan
chat.
called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were
There's
elected again.
commentary that says that she's
I
been
believe
trained
very
to act
strongly
more like a
that the
prosecutor
American
tonight
people
than
want
a president.
a president who understands the importance
Recognize that.
of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump, will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris.
And they didn't even get all of them back.
So
Yeah.
Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy. And the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy.
Trust Goldman Sachs.
Right.
Vote for the Democrats.
would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates
I'm sorry.
have described.
Does everybody
his
forget he was
economic
already
plan as
president and
something
did this
that
shit and
would
everything was
increase
fine and
inflation
worked
by
out
the
well for
middle of
everyone?
next year
Yeah,
would
exactly.
They really
I
think
this
that
is
everybody's
smoking
that
crack.
You just have to look
They think
at
that they're
where we
that
are
stupid.
and where we stand on this.
She-
And a lot
Not
of people are.
that Donald
We-
Trump
we-
actually has
Oh,
no
true.
plan for you because he is
Don't you
more
know
marijuana.
more money to Ukraine and Israel will strengthen the economy?
Literally, he did it for 4 years, and I don't know about y'all, but I
went to
was
the
certainly
Wharton
better
School of
off.
Finance, and
Oh,
many
fuck
of those
yes. We were all better off
think my
not
plan
struggling
is
like we are now.
a great plan. It's a
So
plan
I don't
that's
know
gonna
what the
bring
whole
up our
his
worth,
plan would
our
make the
value as
economy
a
work.
country.
It
It's gonna make
didn't.
people
It's already
wanna
been
be able
done.
to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is.
Man, this isn't going good for Kamala so far because all they're talking about is the
tariffs, as
economy.
pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have, and who's going to have higher prices, is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
A number of them.
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, will let you respond.
First of all,
Exclamation point.
Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore.
Everybody that was trying to spread the
They were the ones that
And
made fun of
policies
him
like
for
that.
saying
I don't say
the
her because
China
she has
virus.
No policy.
Yeah, they said he was racist for trying to cut off travel from China.
4 years ago.
Exactly.
She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it.
That was China too.
It will.
That dude's dead now, by the way.
Our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a
Japan.
Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals.
Mention the cats.
Bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay.
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution.
Family vote for Trump.
No longer abortion. The baby is born is okay. And that's not okay with me. Hence the vote. But what I did is something for
it's not abortion, that's murder.
2 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country that is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Bro, you clarified what he...
And that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have their body, their faith,
take the jab,
beliefs to agree. The government and Donald Trump certainly should not be telling a woman what to do.
Not their body, it's an actual
body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that.
Never ever happened.
Didn't want that.
Yeah, it's never happened.
12
What
or
a stupid
13-year-old
concept.
survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term.
And he just said, like,
They
we don't.
want that. And I pledge to
He literally
you,
just said rape and
when
incest
Congress
exception.
passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But
So
understand,
you're okay with
if
murder?
Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people
Oh, Jesus
believe
Christ. He just said he has
that
nothing to do with
certain freedoms,
2025.
in
I
particular
know.
the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you.
Democrats are immune to arguments.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well, I
to your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade.
And
And
why
as
didn't you do it already?
rightly mentioned,
Yeah,
no
exactly. She's in the fucking office. She can do all this.
is a
She's
woman
out.
carrying a pregnancy to term and in asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working one or two jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to
and your
another
dumbass partner.
to get on a plane sitting next to strangers, to go and get the health care she needs, barely can afford to do it. And what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why
It's a separate body.
in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
It's also
Vice
not
President
true.
Excuse me,
Most
I have to
Americans don't
respond.
agree with abortion.
Another lie.
Obviously,
Yeah.
20 states fucking
I have
voted against it.
On
so.
IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that
Why
question?
don't you answer the question? Would you
Because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer the
Wade,
question. Would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And
Bullshit.
that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
Y'all perfected
And
gun
I'm
trafficking with Fast and
This
Furious.
comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you the one thing you will not hear him
We're getting
talk
shot to death.
You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first. And I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. And it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country. And if she becomes president,
Amen.
this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former President Dick Cheney. And
Wait. I thought they hated Dick Cheney.
And if you want to really know,
until
the
it actually benefits them.
who the former president
Well,
is,
Dick
if you
Cheney
didn't
was
make it
evil,
clear already,
right? So
just ask people who have worked
does that
with
mean
him.
if you
His
support you,
former
you're
chief
evil
of
too?
staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution.
Hypocrisy is great, isn't it?
His former
Didn't
national
Putin
security
endorse
advisor
her?
has said he is dangerous and unfit.
Who?
His former secretary of defense
Putin.
has said
I
the
don't know.
nation, the Republic,
100% he did. I'm asking that, but I know the
another
answer.
Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute.
Not you, because you're the one that's fucking
For the
the country
last
up.
3.5 years you've been in office.
See, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad
What has
things.
she done for this country?
I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen.
Yep.
So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they.
But see all the reports where the people were trashing
and they
Trump
never
for going to the
anybody.
funerals of the 13.
Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration.
Ooh, that was an indictment of the
Let's get back
2020
to your
election.
deportation, proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah. It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, Crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their fraudulent statements that they made. Crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the
Yeah,
FBI
because we're being invaded because Kamala's allowed it to happen.
Excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn
We need to change the government
on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to
it now
support
then.
our
Don't
small
wait.
businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are
Again, do it now.
with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it was Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice
to
President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that
to get,
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run,
Really good point, Trump.
wanted to ban
Points,
fracking.
Trump.
Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you, in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not people down. And name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I've built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Put that bitch in her place, Trump.
She went out in Minnesota.
Be funny.
Wanted
Be
to
funny
let
if he pimp
criminals
slapped her.
that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis. She went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish one thing, so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get to.
environment that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you
First
regret
people entered the
about
Capitol
what
at
you did
roughly
on that
2
day?
p.m.
You just said
He started
a
telling
thing
them
that
stop
isn't covered.
at 2:28
Peacefully
p.m.
and
It was
patriotically,
well
I said
documented.
during my speech,
Wasn't
not
Yeah, but
now.
they suppressed that video like no other.
And patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold.
Never.
The very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up
Right,
for a
did
speech.
what?
I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there.
It was a dark, stormy night.
The president of the United States decided a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died.
No,
and understand,
they started it though. They started shooting pepper balls, right?
For exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation.
Bro, that's a fucking bald-faced lie. Who died? No one.
Where there was a
Actually,
mob
that
of
was
people
fucking
carrying tiki
died.
torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side.
Oh my God.
That's a fucking lie too.
It's been 8 fucking years, dude. It's still a fucking lie.
The former president said,
It's been 8
stand
fucking
back.
years.
and
How long
stand
did he come? How long was it after he came out and made the speech about going home?
January 6th was. I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy.
I wonder if she's going to say her favorite line.
And be clear on that
Do what
point.
must be done. What was it?
Candidate
Unburdened by what has
election,
been.
there will
Right.
be
So,
blowback. If this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking, let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's
What happens if the outcome's not to their liking, though?
Future.
How do things look then?
go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
More violent.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where Bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people They covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Right. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed. Those people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here today. I do it. On this next issue to both of you, because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge it at all. I said that sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about it. An election is fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here at clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
They
said we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how
the moderators were doing a good job, and now they're showing their fucking bias.
Special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election. That was President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress us. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have
Who's
a
fucking their
president
microphone?
of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, It leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think
up.
we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will
Didn't they just kill some of the hostages?
Around the clock on that.
Yep.
Work around the clock. Also understand
they killed specifically the hostages the hostage whose parents spoke at the DNC.
In that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and
they
Israel.
Found out which one it was and they killed
the
them.
Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
Well, she just lost a whole fuck ton of votes.
Yep. Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians.
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. if she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President,
Yemen is 10 times worse than Israel right now as far as what's going on, and no one even knows about
I
it.
have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires
Is that well known?
dictators,
No.
wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of
That's well known too? I thought he had 4 years. Was he a dictator?
whatever
No,
the hell he
not
wants
that I
and going to
remember, but
Ukraine.
maybe I slept
It is
through it.
well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine,
Yeah, I
it
don't
was
understand how there's
brilliant.
a dictator.
It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our
The
military.
fucking difference in perspective is astounding that you
He's
could
the
be
one.
like that far
Of course.
off of reality in your like
national security by
interpretation of
allowing
events.
every nation
Like,
last month.
Trump crossing the
year,
line of the
168
DMZ into
different
North
countries,
Korea
sending people into our
without
country.
security.
Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week. Said, I hope she
Abraham
wins. I
Accords.
think he meant it.
Huge.
Because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this.
This
Have they cut
PBS
her off at all?
is made possible by
No.
Consumer Cellular.
Okay,
This
we're
is
going to mute that for a minute.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, this is so much fun. God damn.
Give me.
I mean, what did you expect it was going to be besides like a bunch of lies and a bunch of like Trumpisms and, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, I should have expected all of it. Oh, by the way, I missed some stuff out here. Martin Bissick gifted a membership. Thank you, Martin. And we did have a super chat. Andrew P. dropped one in and said, stop and frisk concern all gun owners, qualified immunity for civil rights. GOTS as well. Qualified immunity needs to go the fuck away. So does civil asset forfeiture. And stop and frisk is highly unconstitutional.
I was trying to kind of like write out my thoughts so I wasn't interrupting constantly so people could still hear. I don't know if that was effective or not.
I don't know. I don't know. Oh man, this is just another shitstorm, to be honest. I don't know what I was expecting or why I would expect anything different, but
I don't think this is swaying to
Well,
like
I'm
maybe
just-
a couple of people
Come
from
on.
not voting because of Kamala's supporting Israel.
yeah, I don't think that there's nothing I've seen yet that would sway somebody one side or the other. So, you know, I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens. But I haven't seen anything that makes me go, "Oh, that was a swing and a miss for anybody."
Yeah, and there hasn't been too many like good Trump moments either.
No.
That one moment
Do you think
when he
he's holding
said,
back on
"Excuse
purpose?
me, I'm talking," was great.
Oh yeah, he did do that, and then he's like, "Sound familiar?"
That was great.
I missed that part. That's hilarious.
So far, yeah, not a whole lot that I've seen that's like, oh yeah, on either one of their parts, to be honest.
I don't know. I would like to see
We've heard
Trump rather than like being so. I don't know. Like he picks like the extreme examples to talk about, like they're eating animals in the streets, and the other things, which are like obvious fucking points that you can hit or whatever. But like maybe stick to like policy things that get the moderates, because like the moderate people are like looking at this fucking cat fight in the street, and they're like, I don't think I want to. I don't want to have anything to do with that, basically.
Yeah. Andrew P says, Trump supporters, does this concern you? I don't know. Do we have any like hardcore MAGA Trump supporters out there? I mean, I'm voting for the dude. I don't consider myself like a fucking Trump train dude or anything like that. So
I'm not either. I don't think really any of us in here, because we're all pretty like-minded, aren't we? Except for a couple of radicals in here.
I don't think any of us are like a Trump are a member of the Trump fan club. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, like most of us,
Because he's done a lot of shit in the past that I've disagreed with.
Well, and then the other thing they're going to do from this, remind yourselves, is, they control the clips, right? Like, so they control the media and they control the clips. And so they can have these clips and they can clip them out of context and have Trump saying whatever it is that they don't like as a talking point ad nauseum for the next, how long is it till the election?
Yeah, no shit.
So that's what they're going to use this for.
Again, they're still talking about that very good people on both sides.
Right. And it, honestly, like what they say tonight doesn't matter, or like what happens tonight doesn't, even if Trump kills it tonight, I think that they would still take the things that he says out of context in some way, in any way that they can.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously.
They probably,
and then they're going to fucking run with that until like the next thing comes along, basically.
Yeah. Oh, wait, Andrew P's clarifying. I meant Trump's support stop and frisk. Does that concern you? Oh, yeah, of course it does. It just doesn't concern me as much as everything the left is doing, which would be what we would get with Kamala Trump. It really is, at this point, the lesser of two evils. Okay, we're back.
ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position
We're not in this conflict
that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe, like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons I don't like as much as weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president that doesn't know he's alive.
your time is up. Clarifying the question. You believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also
why they got to pick a side? What the fuck? Like,
how would you
really?
deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
Did you say, oh, Biden?
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you.
Nothing to do with that. He wants to save people's lives.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight.
None of them answered the
question. Came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, happier than he is right now. But eventually, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength.
It sounds like she's talking through her nose.
We have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strong men instead of caring about.
Remember Barbara Wawa from?
And that is very much what is at stake
I'm
here.
Barbara Wawa.
The President of the United States is commander in chief.
Back when Saturday Night
And
Live
the
was
American
funny.
people have
Yeah,
a
that's what she
right to
sounds like.
rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
He wasn't in office.
I agree with President Biden's decision
Oh,
to pull out of Afghanistan.
I thought they were
Both
asking him.
presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this. And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the president of the United States to be commander-in-chief.
I only let illegal immigrants into Camp David.
And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump,
I feel like this is sucking my soul away.
And the
Yeah,
negotiations.
thank you.
is, isn't it?
So if you take a
That's
look
why
at that,
he went to the 13th fallen and they
the
didn't.
Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers.
Well, she can
I got
suck your soul
involved
away.
with the Taliban
Yeah, she
because the
actually
Taliban
yeah,
was doing the killing. That's the
They
fighting
were
force
strong.
in Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo.
Like boss's shit ever, bro.
The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move
And
on.
these people did the
Team
worst.
Sauce 1911 for 300 beans.
In my opinion, the most embarrassing
That's
moment
about
in the
normal.
history of our
I saw
country.
that.
By the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how
Yeah,
incompetent
that's how bored I am with this right
and her
now.
boss are.
President Trump, thank you.
Tired
I want to move on now to race and politics. in
of
this
hearing
country.
her annoying voice.
President, you recently said of Vice
Well, is
President
there a taco here?
knows she was black until a number of years ago.
I am
Yeah.
here.
She happened to turn black,
Is
and
it a
now
whole ass taco?
she's black.
A whole ass
I
taco.
want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight.
Look at that.
Why
You got that thing I sent you?
Right there.
Get to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent.
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't
That's
care.
a good one. That was a good one.
Make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So I'm
I don't
asking,
know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out.
She ran as Indian
then
American.
I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. I do believe that the majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember,
Yeah, this isn't a good attack for Trump, I don't think.
land he'd owned
It
land.
might be
he owned
true, but it's just
buildings,
something that like people on the
and
right are snickering
he was
about more than like a talking point
because
against anybody.
he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American
Actually, that
people
was fucking Hillary
want
Clinton. but
better
okay.
than that. Want better than this. Want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend, we see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other.
So she didn't point out anything.
Tell
recent?
me, can we please just
No.
have discourse
No.
about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this. She is Biden.
How long is this
She's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman. She says, she is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up.
The longer this goes on, the more and more that Harris is looking
Clearly,
defeated in the
I am not
face.
Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer
Literally,
is
you're the vice president of the United States right now.
one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan.
I don't have a plan.
To give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life.
Is this
to
almost
help
over?
in that most
I hope
critical
so.
stage of your child's development.
I really
have
do.
a plan that
Is
is
all this
about
money going to illegals?
to be able to
I
pursue
could be asleep
what
right
has
now,
been
God damn it.
fleeting in terms of
I
the
feel like sleeping right now. Like I was fine before this started, and now I'm like, oh my god,
payment of
bro.
$25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump,
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay. Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump,
president has said
no, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry.
I
We're
just
gonna
need to
move
respond
on, Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal.
She couldn't even overtalk the fucking moderator.
No, that moderator
to accomplish that.
that business,
You
man.
now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan? And can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration.
So many good people.
We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something. I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff.
Bullshit.
You admitted
yourself you were
just
going
look at the history to
mandatory
know what
buyback.
people said. When Donald Trump was president,
what is a gun buyback?
times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time. When I will
Getting
never
rid of people's guns, a gun buyback, forced
hours.
gun buyback. By the way,
It was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great
that's what she
John
said.
McCain,
Forced gun buyback.
you have disparaged
Yep.
as
That's what I was
being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight. You remember what that was
Say in
like?
the beginning of the
Remember when an insurance
debate
company
that she was going to
if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes?
Yeah, what it means
And
is I cannot get
As
insurance.
I've been vice president, and
then
we
when
over
I
the
get
last
sick or
4
I get
years have
hurt,
strengthened the
I
Affordable
go get
Care Act.
insurance.
We have allowed for the first
And
time
then a day
Medicare
later, I go to the
negotiations
doctor with my insurance.
on behalf of you, the American people.
And
Donald
then as
Trump
soon
said
as
he
my
was going
legs
to allow
healed,
Medicare to negotiate
I
drug
stopped
prices.
paying for
Never did.
insurance.
We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we
Bullshit.
have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors. At
I just say that as somebody that works at an insurance company, that's absolute bullshit.
For all people understanding
Insulin is
that
not
the
capped at
value I bring to
$35.
this
No, it's not.
is that access to health care
I know.
be a right.
Oh
and
shit,
not
you got that sugar?
those who
Taco?
don't.
I know people who have it.
Plan
And they're-
has to be
You got that sugar, dog?
the Affordable Care Act, not get
they're
rid of
spending
it.
a lot of money on
Pass
that.
this
President
prologue
Harris,
in
thank
terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
She
lot
made a
of
mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't
Let's start
only
calling
him.
me
It
sugar
was
tacos.
all of the Democrats that kept it going.
Call 'em sugar
And you
tits.
know what? Much better than Obamacare. Much
Sugar
less
tits.
money.
Sweet and
But
sour taco.
Private
You fucked up thing to
insurance,
call your wife sugar
private
taco.
medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have
Like in
another issue
Canada.
to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you
All right,
say
we can just pause
clean
this,
air,
right?
clean water. Vice President
this part
Harris,
doesn't
you
fucking
call
matter.
climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very
What would you
real.
do?
You ask anyone who
Former
lives
president says that it's a hoax.
experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been
But
the
Obama
victim
buys,
means in
ocean
terms of
property
losing their
on these
home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this
I want to
issue.
hear more about guns.
As vice president, over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump
You guys
said
get any of them sweet manufacturing jobs?
manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the
Me either.
United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that
The
part of
imaginary.
building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs.
She's
this
been
last-
practicing.
It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other.
They're bringing in like $3,000 Chinese cars.
Business and manufacturing in this country
Cadillac,
is
fuck.
horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
Amen.
President, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates in a historic
Hey, it's
night
almost over.
News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Is it time for that yet?
Yeah, almost. You know what?
The ABC News
Okay,
presidential
mute that
debate will
shit.
continue.
God damn it.
Holy hell!
That's loud as fuck, man.
Gee, is it over yet, Dad?
Oh my God.
Almost.
So
We can
I'm
see the
looking
finish
at-
line.
I'm looking at the number of viewers, right? Like on each one, each one of the feeds. It's like 308,000.
That's it?
That's it.
Jesus.
And then I'm looking at the like sub count
That's-
of the people who have listened to Lex Friedman and as well as Theo Vaughn. That's like 3 million subs per person. And those are the two people that did the Trump interviews.
Again, though, they're gonna take all the whole thing and then clip little bits of it and take things out of context and come
Yeah,
up with
but
talking
to
points
where?
and attack things. I mean, we don't know. I mean, it's just they've got all fucking kinds of cannon fodder. It just depends on how the spin fucking doctors spin that shit. You know what I mean?
No,
That's how they
well-
always do that.
No, what I'm saying is like, where are they going to post?
We can
that
all
at?
picture the headlines tomorrow.
Oh, I mean, there's still, I would say, a fair amount of people who retardedly listen to the authoritative sources of news when it comes to current events, like they know what they're talking about after they see it. So they look at CNN or ABC or NBC or Fox News or whatever the case is, and they look at the headline and they read the headline and they say, oh, I know what's going on in the Aurora complex takeover by the Venezuelans or whatever, you know? Whatever the case is.
Well, I will say there will be far more people that pay attention to the clips and the TikToks and all the shit that come out than are actually
Yeah.
watching the whole thing.
Yeah, and that
I
will
would say
reach
that
way
one.
more people than who's watching it live, for sure.
I see that Steven Crowder is at 54K and Tim Pool is at 85K.
You need to look up a PDB podcast. I don't know what.
No,
they're
I
at.
was just looking at that earlier. I don't know which one was that one.
They're live right now. They got
Yeah.
130. They got half
Damn.
of half of what the fucking actual feed is doing. Holy shit!
We certainly have less than we normally
So is
would
this
right
going
now
how
because there's so
everyone
much.
thought it would?
There's so many other people
mean,
who are streaming right now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
No. I mean, I don't know. 103 people watching us. That's not. That's not too bad.
Between Matt's and mine.
We get like 130.
Yeah, normally what do you get up to? Like 150 maybe, and I usually get up to like maybe.
Yeah,
100.
it hovers. But yeah.
No one is watching mines. I'm sad.
Oh, you're streaming too, there?
Yep.
Oh,
What the
shit.
fuck? We don't even know you stream.
Leo
Hey,
streams.
I don't. But
Well, hold on.
Like, fuck it, I will
doing it
tonight.
now. Yep. I will tonight.
Wait, do you know about computers?
Barely. Thanks to Night Strike. Well, we'll help Night Strike.
Never mind, man. I guess you didn't get. Well, because
No. I know what you're talking about. That,
Are you talking
black
about
people
Night Strike,
in
the
inner city.
individual, or Night Strike, the omnipotent being?
Night Strike.
the one in the
God.
Because there's two versions of him, and one of them
Blasphemy.
is on Earth right now.
I think
And
that one
sometimes he
is
joins
same.
the chats.
No, I know what you're talking about.
So is this
like,
debate going?
black
around
people in
everywhere?
the inner city don't know how to use a computer. That
Oh, you know how to use a computer because you do music and shit.
Yep.
Matt, I sent you. So surprisingly, MSNBC had their comments on, and they're
Lord.
off now. And I sent you the comments. I sent you a clip of the comments.
They probably shut. Like, oh, wait a minute, we got to turn this shit off.
And pretty much it's like 1 out of 300 or so people were for no, 1 out of 300 people were for Harris in the comments.
What about Yankee? Is Yankee streaming it? Is he even on?
I thought it was funny though. She was talking about.
He's screaming. He's not talking about this. He doesn't like fucking. He doesn't like watching or talking about debates.
No.
She was talking about she's not a gun confiscator. They're not going to confiscate guns. Dude, and I know we literally said this just a minute ago, but I need to reiterate the fact that I don't know where this quote was, but it was with her fucking vice president pick, so it was recently. This wasn't like fucking months or years ago or whatever.
It was just a couple weeks ago.
That she wants to do a forced buyback of firearms.
Yeah. No. They did a thing together.
Said that in the beginning of the debate.
All right, let me get this super chat here real quick, and then we're going to get back to the
One
debate.
of her opening remarks.
Kowloon says, read my last chat, to which he says, I just got a text from the NAGR asking me if I'm watching this debate because Kamala is lying to the favorite or American people.
Face of the American people.
Face? Oh, the face. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Okay, it's back. Let's finish this up.
Different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe
we can be inverted.
People know we all have
By
so
what
much
has
more
been.
in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having
I think these are the last talking points.
understanding the aspirations,
To go last.
the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why
I hope
I
Trump
intend to
practiced.
create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do.
It's not just her body.
I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, United States Senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as
Joe Brown.
I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first.
Are you okay?
I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years.
Are you guys okay?
Build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
No, I've been doing pretty fucking shitty lately. I don't know.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years.
Amen,
They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it. because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our
Don't compare yourself to Germany when everyone calls you Hitler.
vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country, many of
Tens
them
of millions.
and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News.
Please make it stop. Jesus Christ.
Okay, it's done.
That one wasn't too bad of a.
Holy fuck!
Bro, I thought it was horrible, man. That was really. I feel like a vampire has been sucking on my neck for an hour and a half. And they're like,
I don't know, man.
They keep you at that point where you're almost dead, but you're still breathing and shit. So they can suck more blood out of you.
I don't know what the fuck that was. Like I
lost
I had hopes at first, but they were quickly dashed.
Well, it certainly wasn't like high energy fucking
I
funny.
lost count how many times that bitch lied tonight.
Oh shit! They actually are fact checking both of them.
All right,
that's cool.
What's the betting site, the betting pool site that shows?
Oh, you're not going to see that right now, but
I mean that's instantaneous. They update it like second by second.
betting polls on election.
Yeah, there's a
election betting odds.com. Is that one?
Odds checker, no.
Or
election betting odds.com, maybe. Real Clear Politics. What's that one?
That's just they do polls and stuff. It's a good website, but it's not for betting or anything like that.
Yeah, no, that one's not.
Let's check out Odds Checker.
It looks like it didn't change.
God, there's so many pop-ups. God damn, bro. God damn, bro.
Okay, well, that was fun. I'm gonna get the fuck up out of here. Go to bed. It's my Tuesday night. It's my night to go to bed early, and these fucking things fuck me up. Let me get the super chat here real quick. Nuclear energy is the answer. Read MU last chat. LOL. Read my last.
Yep, I'm all for nuclear energy.
420. I'll give you a sympathy super chat because your chat has fewer watching.
Aw.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a live stream right now. Hold on. Wait for it. Don't end the chat yet, Matt, please.
I'm not.
What are we going to call this? The after chat?
The wake up chat.
Wait.
You know everybody fucking fell asleep after that shit.
America's Doom chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good
The
God,
after
Matt, are you re- I can
debate
read
chat
this
with
one?
E Honda and friends is created right now. Hold on. I have to share here if anyone wants to join from here. This link. And I'll have to actually send that out to a bunch of other people as well. And then I've got to pull up on YouTube where the chat is. Sorry, bear with me.
This is almost as boring as the debate.
Almost, but not quite. Not quite.
And I've now posted in the chat. So if you guys want to join the chat that's about to start, because Matt's chat is ending.
Yep. Everybody go run over there.
And when
First
we'll be starting here in
shenanigans.
Yeah, if you guys want to hop over there, and I'll send it out to everybody else too, if anyone else is out there that wants to join. But yeah, we'll see you in a second.
All right. So, as always, ladies and gentlemen, deuces, yo, shut up, pee in fridge. I don't know, whatever. Welcome to
another thing.
Kamala can swallow.
Hamilton
Nice.
Harris.
Anyway, all right, we're gonna get out of here. I'll see everybody tomorrow night. Thanks for watching that
The Jizz
boring ass
Queen.
debate with us, and we'll see you guys next time. Later.